Good evening, ghouls and fiends, and welcome once again to the Ministry of Horror. If you're watching live on the not the podcast feed, on the live stream on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, wherever, you will see that I am not alone for today's show. I am joined by Ministry of Slam alumni of Unexplained Possibilities, on the also known from the is it the Dark Side of the Slam?
Unexplained side of the slam.
That's the one. Sorry, Unexplained Side of the Slam. I'm joined by Crimson Mel. Crimson Mel, how
Hello.
are you today?
I am good. Had a little bit of a busy day doing a lot of tarot, but I am good and happy to be here. Really excited.
Excellent. I'm happy to have you on the show. We've been discussing this for a little while. I see we've got Carrie is cool 34, who's my sister, in the chat, and also Fran the Cannon says evening. So we got a jam packed show this evening. We got a jam packed show. Before we get into the news, some reviews, and then the main discussion point of the show, Mel, I always like to kind of ask a few questions when I have a guest on to get a bit of an insight into their likes, maybe their dislikes, what their interests are within the realm of horror. So, could you tell me a bit about kind of your origin story of horror? Like, what drew you initially into the genre?
Okay, well, with me, it's a little weird because I'm very selective with the type of horror movies I like, and I don't like senseless killing just to kill. Like that doesn't do it for me. I like things with a little bit of a plot and some reasoning behind it. uh, and it's going to sound weird, but and perhaps you can't even consider it true horror, but Child's Play is actually what drew me in, and it wasn't because I thought it was frightening. I just absolutely loved Chucky. I thought he was hilarious. I'm a little kid watching this, and I'm laughing my butt off, like, "Oh my god, he's so funny! Hey, look at him with the knife." I don't know what that says about me, but that's actually what drew me into it. It was the characters. It's the villainous characters and their reasoning for doing whatever they would end up doing. So from Chucky, it went to I like the supernatural horrors, as you can tell. It went to Friday the 13th. Really enjoyed that. Nightmare on Elm Street. The first two I liked, I should say. And then it sort of transitioned a little bit to the sci-fi horror, like The Thing and Aliens, and I noticed that I like this trend of someone being stalked and playing a little psychological game and almost a minimalist approach the to the kills and just things happening, but it suckered me in.
Yeah, for sure. It kind of almost feels like a bit of a lost art in today's cinema. You don't get that many. I kind of tend to think of it as like a stalk and slash. Those horrors or thrillers where you have that sense of foreboding and almost kind of like chase sequences. I mean, Aliens a prime example. Up see Dan Neppy has joined in from on the YouTube. Hi Dan.
Hello,
Um,
Dan.
my sister saying same supernatural horror is my favorite. Yeah, it's we've got kind of today's modern horrors like the Malignants and the Conjurings, which have their own sort of tone, and I love those films. They're great, but yeah, I do really like that, like the paranoia from The Thing, just excellent. Who's been infected? You don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was very psychological, and it puts you in there because you can see yourself and asking like, huh, what would I do if this happened, or how would I survive? I think when it comes to horror, you have to create it so the viewer becomes part of the movie, where they're in there and they're thinking, I wouldn't do that. Why are you doing that, stupid? I would go this way. You become part of it, and that's what makes it so good. And And unfortunately, not too many, horror films in modern times do that. Too much anyway.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, and you kind of talked about some of the films that brought you, to the genre. As at right now, and this can be films, this could be TV shows, this could be literature. If you had to pick a top three horror in your life, as in your favorite films, books, TV, what would they be currently, and why?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Okay, so well, Aliens. I have to say that. Um, Aliens because I do have an interest in extraterrestrial life, and it just it's a sense of fear that you get from there that very few things are able to implement. Like, it's just the and it suckers you in so good, and Ripley's amazing, and it just keeps you going. Like, how are you going to get out of this? You should be dead, that type of thing. Uh, After Aliens, I would again have to say Child's Play because I love Chucky. And let me say, Child's Play 1 through I skip over 3. Child's Play 1, 2, and I like Bride of Chucky.
Okay, yeah.
Part 3, yeah. So part 3, I'm just whatever with, and everything after Bride of Chucky, I just no. Um, but that really got me because of the character of Chucky, and it's just a must see because the character, you're not supposed to like the little crazy scary doll killer, yet how can you not? I mean, he's so outrageous and he's so creepy. A doll should not be threatening, yet here he is. And it shows how you can make anything scary and come after you and come to life. I just think that's amazing.
Did
And
you ever catch the
huh?
TV series of Chucky?
I saw some of it, and unfortunately, it didn't speak to me.
No.
It didn't speak to me, but I will take that over all the recent movies. And then the last one would have to be The Evil Dead, all of the Evil Deads. Even though the first one is more traditional horror than the other two from the trilogy movies, um, it's just so well done. I mean, it's that Ash is killing monsters. Well, eventually, once he gets brave, he's killing monsters. It's gory, it's bloody, it has its scary moments. And of course, as it went on, it added comedic elements, which takes away from the horror some, but it can still have that horror theme going. So yeah, The Evil Dead. I'm a huge fan of The Evil Dead.
Did you enjoy the I don't want to say remakes, it's not really a remake, but the
I like to call it a retelling.
retelling, yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I did like it. That one, well, it was very much the first movie in the sense of like, no, we're going traditional. We're going to scare the bejeebus out of you. So I thought it was very good.
Yeah. No, I enjoyed that one too. I think they had a good they didn't have so much of the comedic elements, but they really went full on in the horror. And there's a few scenes in that I do think are generally quite unsettling. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed with that. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed that. Right, we're going to now look at some news pieces from the last week in horror. First off, we have news that Scream 6 is going to be releasing in theaters in March 2023. It's announced last month. Paramount and Spyglass have ordered up Scream 6 in the direct wake of Scream's box office success, and they now have a release date of March 31st, 2023. I'm not going to read on further because I've still not read, not seen Scream 5. Mel, are you a Scream fan? And if so, have you seen the most recent one?
I have only seen the first two
Okay.
because, yeah, I, this is going to sound bad, but I'm not a big fan of Friday the 13th aside, and Halloween, some Halloweens, I'm not a big fan of the slashers too much, the teenage slashers,
Mm.
and because everyone's so stupid in them. Like that's my problem. They're just so stupid, and so I'm really shocked that there's a Scream 6 so soon at that. They must have been planning it while they were making part 5 to begin with, because I I can't see them just turning around and doing 6 so soon.
No, it's you'd kind of hope that they've already got a plan for the script in place, because what can happen and has happened in the past and no doubt will happen again in the future is a film has such a high level of success that a sequel is greenlit quite quickly before they've even got a script ready. And I think we had that with Halloween 4 going into Halloween 5. I think it was released less than a year later, and
Yeah.
they really had to rush that script through. And I do like Halloween 5, but you can tell that some ideas were kind of just, we need to get something going because we need to hit while the strike while the iron's hot. Um, but like you say, hopefully they've got something in the pipeline for the quick turnaround on that.
I,
Next up in the news, I'll pop this link from bloodydisgusting.com in the live chat. Hi Gruff. Gruff says evening everyone, and Franacan says the reimagining of Evil Dead was great. Thoroughly agree. Um, the poster has been released. Creepy poster from A24, who are a studio I love, for a new film called Men, with a full trailer coming tomorrow. There's been a teaser trailer, which I think may be in the link, but it's the new Alex Garland film, who is the writer-director of Ex Machina and Annihilation. Men stars Oscar nominee Jessie Buckley, and the film follows a young woman who goes on a solo vacation to the English countryside after the death of her ex-husband. That's all we've got to go on so far. The teaser trailer really didn't tell us much, but it had a quite creepy tone. So I believe tomorrow we should get the full trailer. Yeah, interested to watch this. Have you heard much about this film, Mel?
I have not, but from that little description you just read, I'm wondering if it's going to be like a horror version of P.S. I Love You.
Ooh, could be. That would be pretty interesting. I mean, Alex Garland. I don't remember a great deal about Annihilation, to be honest, but Ex Machina had a good level of that kind of sort of how would you describe it? It's kind of like low key, futuristic, kind of sci-fi dread, but on a very small scale. It's
Yeah.
small cast on that, but yeah, Men trailer comes out tomorrow. Next up, got just a couple little bits to add on. Supernatural TV series, which I never finished, but I did enjoy. I think I just got a little bit burnt out next to so much of it. There is a prequel series titled The Winchesters, and it's currently in the works. The CW have ordered a pilot episode. Casting is currently underway for the pilot. Variety reports that Meg Donnelly of American Housewife and Drake Roger from The In-Between, I've not heard of either of those, have been cast as the younger versions of John and Mary Winchester, the duo that the Supernatural prequel will center on. The older versions of these characters were played in the original Supernatural series by Jeffrey Dean Morgan, of Watchmen and The Walking Dead fame, and Samantha Smith. So, Mel, do you know much about the Supernatural TV series? Did you ever watch that?
That's yes. I love Supernatural. That is one of my favorite TV series ever.
So you're pretty hyped for the prequel series?
No, I'm
Oh,
not. Well, and it's because the characters of Mary and John, they I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't seen the show, but how they started and where they ended up is it a 180 happened.
okay.
And to me, it took away from their characters. And I think with the prequel series, it's going to hurt their legacy a little bit more than help it. So I don't think, as much as I love Supernatural, I really love Supernatural. It pains me to say that I don't think the Winchesters is going to be that good.
You know, I did love Supernatural, and I never stopped watching it because of anything. It's not like The Walking Dead, which for me I just got burnt out on. It got to a point, maybe a season or so after Negan appeared, where I just I'd kind of lost interest. Supernatural I did really enjoy, but I think I just started falling behind on it and never really caught up. I see the Gruff has said I loved Supernatural until season 8, then got bored too. My sister says that she's not seen it, but she needs to get around to it. Franna Cannon loved Supernatural, and the Gruff says part of the reason Supernatural was so good was the Winchester brothers, so I have no interest in watching if they aren't there. I don't care about prequel stuff for the series. I think it was probably for me. I don't know. I think it maybe season 10 or 11. Maybe they'd introduced this the Book of Men group, or the something of Men uh, part
Men of
Men of
Letters.
Letters. That's the one. And yeah, I think at that point I thought the first 5, 6, 7 seasons were really good, really strong and concise. And you get to a certain point with supernatural shows, and I think it happens to every sort of show, like Buffy and Angel and so on, where you have a big bad for the season. How do you top that the next season? You have to have something
Yeah.
that's even bigger, even more destructive. And they did a really good that. They had so many great seasons of that. But it is definitely on my to finish. I recently started season 1 again. But yeah, I probably agree with you with regards, and agree with everyone in the chat with regards to the prequel ideas. I've got zero interest in watching their parents. Not for me. Not for me.
Um, real quick, I'll say this. Like season one of Supernatural, I thought is pretty bad. I don't like season
Okay.
one, but the first 5 seasons sets the tone, and it was only supposed to be a 5 season show. The creator wanted that. He was like, nope, no more than this, and that's why he stepped down. But show was so popular, they continued on, and most of the hardcore fans they will say that the Gamble era, season 6 and 7, mm, yeah,
Okay.
that's the dark times. But ultimately, I agree with you because the later seasons, I still like them, but they're not as good as the earlier season. And it's because the big bad had to get bigger and badder every time. And then it became even more unbelievable. And that hurts. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'll I'm not even going to say I'll check this out when it comes out. I'll see what the general kind of buzz is at the time. If there's any kind of goodwill towards it or not. Franacan says he has some faith that this might be good. Jensen Eccles has been working on this, and I think I heard about that. Jensen Eccles appeared on. Oh, I can't remember the actor's name, but he played Lex Luthor in Smallville. He does a podcast, and he
mhm.
had Jensen Ackles on, and they talked about a bit of an annoyance between Jared Padalecki and Jensen, because Jared didn't know about this being in production, and then a news report had come out while Jensen was kind of in the initial stages working on it, and then obviously if he doesn't know about it and then it comes out in the news as opposed to hearing it directly, it's just one of those kind of bit of bad communication which created a little bit of bad blood. But I think they quickly resolved that. So yeah, we'll see the Supernatural prequel series. And last up on the news, some sad news. Friday the 13th Part 2 actor Jack Marks has passed away.
Hmm.
Um, the news comes from fellow Friday the 13th Part 2 actor Bill Randolph. The sad news that Jack Marks, best known to horror fans for his role in the 1981 sequel, has passed away. He played Deputy Winslow in Friday the 13th Part 2, who chases an adult Jason Voorhees through the woods. Arriving at his shack, Jason kills the deputy with a hammer. Um, doesn't say doesn't say his age, but I mean, I think in part two he was quite a grizzled deputy, so he probably had some good innings. But oh, here we go. He died peacefully just short of his 87th birthday, and he'd been with his wife for 39 years. So, yeah, sad news for the horror community. But there we go. Right now we're gonna do some reviews. We're gonna do some little reviews, Mel. I've got two films and I've got a little bit of a book club chat. So let's transition to our other screen. That's not what we're reviewing. We're going to be first off reviewing an English horror film called In the Earth. It's been on my little to watch list for a little while. Finally got around to watching it the weekend. It's a 2021 horror film written and directed by Ben Wheatley. It's a British and American co-production. It stars Joel Fry, who TV viewers may recognize from he was in a Roman era comedy called Plebs, which was pretty good in the first couple of seasons. It was kind of like the In-Betweeners, but in the Roman era. But also he's known for, I can't remember the character's name, but he was in Game of Thrones. I think he was going to be married Khaleesi, and then got burnt alive by a dragon. Spoiler alert. Anyway, he stars in it with Reece Shearsmith, Hayley Squires, Laura Torchia, John Hollingworth, and Mark Monero. But the general gist of this is it's set during a epidemic type era, so you can kind of tell that it was filmed, during the height of the pandemic. It's quite a small cast. But a scientist, Martin Lowry, is sent to a government-controlled outpost in a fertile forest area outside of Bristol to help in studies and experiments of his former colleague and his ex-lover, Olivia Wendell, regarding using mycorrhiza to increase crop efficiency. So generally, he has gone into this forest to try and find this associated with. But they come across Reece Shearsmith's character. Now, I won't go into too much of it because you don't want to give too much away from the film, but there is a real kind of oldie times cult element. There's talk of can the forest or can parts of the forest communicate, and do they have nefarious intents? There's also kind of a stone obelisk in the middle of the forest, and one part of the group is looking at this from a scientific standpoint. Another part is looking at it from a kind of like a pagan god standpoint. It's I enjoyed the film. I'd recommend giving it a watch. If you've ever seen any Ben Wheatley stuff, such as names of the films, God, I've got a terrible memory. He did Kill List. He did Sightseers, which is a very good dark comedy. A Field in England, which is a really just an attack on the senses. It's got his signature style. There's a couple of moments where it seems, oh, Joseph Dyer. Okay, this is nothing like the wrestling pod. Very strange mix, especially after the live video gameplay. I'll give MOS another one. This is the once a week horror show, Joseph Dyer. It's not going to be for everyone, but I appreciate you stopping by, and hopefully you find something you like on it. It's definitely something worth watching. There's a couple of moments though where it's almost like they switched from these high stylized cameras to kind of like cheap cameras. It's really hard to describe, but I don't know. Does it pique your interest at all, Crimson Mel? Have you seen In the Earth?
I have not, but I am. Oh, the, that was weird. I have not, but I am interested in it. And I have my pendulum here because we're going to talk to some spirits too and see if they're interested in it.
Okay.
Which, what would you like to be? Yes. And what would you like to be? No. All right. So go ahead and ask them if they're interested in it, Tezz.
Okay, spirits, are you interested in the semi-pagan horror film In the Earth?
You're getting a very, very strong yes.
Oh, I would definitely say it's one worth a watch. I mean, with any of the recent reviews we've had a lot of Shudder exclusives, and they've really kind of missed the mark a bit. This is not a Shudder exclusive. I caught this on Sky in the UK. Sky Cinema. My score for it is a 7 out of 10. I think it's a strong film. I think the ending was a little. I know we've talked about this before, but the ending was a little ambiguous,
Of course.
which I don't really like unless it's done well. But other than literally probably the final frame of the film, I think it's quite a good attack on the senses, especially some of the very trippy scenes. Next up, we have a recent Disney Plus exclusive. I know you're probably thinking Disney Plus on the Horror Channel. What are you talking about? It's the new Sebastian Stan film, who Plus people know it as the Winter Soldier. Fresh. It's a 2022 American comedy thriller, but it's got some horror elements. Directed by Mimi Cave in her directorial debut, from a screenplay by Lauren Kahn, and it stars Daisy Edgar Jones and Sebastian Stan. I really enjoyed this. So it's the little blurb about this is the plot follows a young woman played by Daisy Edgar Jones who starts dating a charming man. So she's one of those perennial singles in that she'll go on dates and it just never really clicks. Friends are all getting relationships and whatnot, and she hasn't had much of a. I think her parents or her mum or dad may have passed away when she was young, so she's been fairly solitary, but good friend base. And doesn't really meet anyone. She happens to bump into Sebastian Stan's character, and they start dating. Only to discover his horrifying true nature. This is difficult because you can't really say too much without giving away a huge part of the film. But take the title, Fresh, make your own assumptions up about what that may mean. Have you seen this film? Have you heard about this film, Mel?
No, this is the first time I'm hearing about it, and it makes me think of two things. This old Disney Channel movie where it's like my mom's dating a vampire or something like that,
Okay.
and this 80s movie, and I can't really remember the name of it, but it was about a guy who dies, but he comes back as a freaking zombie, and he's decaying, and he wants the prom date, and I cannot think of the name of it. So with the Fresh, I'm like, is this a zombie thing or is this a
Ooh,
vampire thing?
ooh, that's. I'll say. Do I say anything to give anything away? The Gruff caught this last night. Says really enjoyed it. Now this is one thing. The soundtrack to this film is incredible. Like I love hard rock, heavy metal, all that stuff. But I have a soft spot for synth, a lot of 80s music. And this had the Saturday Night Main Event theme, talking about Ministry of Slam wrestling, Obsession, which the name escapes me of the group that did it, but that is a banging song, and that's got there's quite a cool scene in it where again I can't really say anything without giving away a huge element of the plot twist. Well, it's not really a plot twist; it's the general theme of the film. But I would say, don't read up anything about this film. If you've got any interest in it, there's dark comedy in it, and there's the general kind of theme is quite horrifying, and that's kind of really all I want to say on the film. Other than I would give it not even a 7 out of 10. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. Should we ask the spirits if the spirits are interested in watching Fresh?
Go ahead and ask.
Spirits, is there any interest in watching the 2022 Sebastian Stan Daisy Edgar Jones film Fresh?
They're giving a very hard no. They're not interested in this one.
Okay.
What would you guys prefer? Something like Poltergeist? Now you see that shift, right?
There's this there's no supernatural element in this film. It's again I can't really say much.
Yeah, you just let's move on.
Let's
You gotta hush.
let's move on. Animotion. Gruff says he thinks the group's called. But yeah, Obsession, Saturday Night Main Event theme, banging. We'll now do a little bit of discussion on the book club, and then we're going to get into the main event of the show. So, Forbidden. Oh, right. Where's my picture of it? There we go. Creepy picture. So, last week we discussed the short story Midnight Meat Train from Books of Blood Volume 1 by Clive Barker. I loved it. I thought, why have I taken so long to really get into reading Clive Barker? This week we have done The Forbidden, which is in Books of Blood Volume 5. My goodness. This was the basis for the film Candyman, which there's been now 4 films: Candyman, Candyman Day of the Dead, Farewell to the Flesh, and then the recent Candyman, which is a reboot slash sequel. I've not seen it because Candyman's. I like Candyman, but it's not my go-to franchise. Anyway, this is a really interesting read. Again, it's a tight, concise story. It's about 30 pages long. It follows this woman, this kind of art major called Helen, who's gone to, and I believe this is set in Liverpool as opposed to America. She's gone to these kind of dilapidated areas where crime runs rampant. There's graffiti everywhere, and it's the graffiti that interests her. She kind of goes into this apartment block where there's an abandoned apartment, and she sees this huge mural on the wall of this really creepy kind of it's a face that's surrounding the entranceway of this door, so like the door's the center of the mouth. And that is represented in the film. I believe there's a scene of that. But this is where it kind of differs a bit. The ending of the book is kind of similar to the film. There's a mention of this phrase, "sweets for the sweet." That's also represented in the film. But I think he may refer to himself once as the Candyman when he appears. There's none of this "say his name 5 times in a mirror." That's something that's entirely done for the cinematic adaptation stories. It's quite grisly. The elements of his name and his notoriety kind of being what makes him alive is something which is, you kind of get that element played on in like the films do play on that a bit, but also Nightmare on Elm Street. The power comes from the fear, people being afraid of this omnipotent killing entity, kind of drive and create his power even more. But there's none of the backstory that the film has about the what was it? He was an aristocratic gentleman, but from a darker past, who was accused of something he didn't do and was murdered. Had bees covered his body, had his hand cut off and replaced with a hook. All that stuff. So the film has done quite a lot more to expand this story and add to it than the actual short does. But it's good. It's definitely one worth a read. Mel, are you familiar with much of Clive Barker's work?
Not too much, but I am familiar with Candyman, a little bit about the Forbidden. I really enjoyed the first Candyman, um, so I'm somewhat familiar with its origins, and the supernatural paranormal part of me is coming out. So I have to say it is something to that mirror thing and saying a name several times. You can see mirrors kind of like portals, which is why they say don't have two mirrors facing each other, because you can create a portal which spirits pass through. So you saying that name, feeding it that energy, you can possibly cause something to appear and walk through, even if you don't know it. So be very careful with mirrors and things facing them.
Okay, so is that? Do you think maybe they kind of in the film took some elements of the Bloody Mary story, because
Yeah.
that's related to saying the name in front of a mirror, isn't it?
Yep. I definitely think they do. They did because, and with mirrors, they use them in seances and things of that nature as well. So they're using a little bit of lore with Bloody Mary as well as actual things that people do for some type of divination to communicate. So it's a mix going on in there.
Yeah, it's one of those one of those things where, like, as I was saying to Mel before the show started, I am a skeptic, but I'm an open-minded skeptic. I'll try and look for a logical explanation on things, but if something occurs, I experience something I can't explain. I'm not gonna shut it down. Um, that being said, with being a skeptic, one, I would never play with a Ouija board, even though in my logical head I think, well, nothing's gonna happen. I'm still not gonna attempt it, and saying the name, like the Legend of Bloody Mary, saying as Fran the Can said, saying that name in front of a mirror, I'm not gonna chance it. Right, excellent. Now we're going to get to the let's get to the main part of the show. Now, Mel, we're going to be talking about uh, 5 horror films that deal with the paranormal, but you're going to talk me through the reality behind those stories, those concepts. Is that right?
Yep, or to the best of my ability.
Excellent.
I mean, it could just all be nonsense, and we'll just say, it's nonsense. Next.
No, no, no. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. We're going to start off with 2001 supernatural horror film, 13 Ghosts. It's a remake of a 1960 film by William Castle. But this film stars Tony Shalhoub, Embeth Davidtz, Matthew Lillard, and Shannon Elizabeth, with Alec Roberts, Ra Digger, and F. Murray Abraham. Um, so there's a big old synopsis here, but it's generally about a ghost hunter and a psychic who lead a team on a mission to capture a spirit called the Juggernaut. And they go into this quite elaborate house that you could say it's haunted, but that's probably going to be a bit of an understatement, right?
Yes.
So
Very
I've seen this film quite a long time ago, but yeah, we don't have a. We can kind of go through the hit points of the plot. Dennis, who's the psychic assistant, meets the family. They tour the mansion. The residence is made entirely of glass sheets inscribed with Latin phrases, which Dennis recognizes as barrier spells. He discovers that the 12 angry ghosts he and Cyrus captured and imprisoned in the house are held captive by the spells. And I think it's at this point that we start seeing a number of these different ghosts, and things start going quite wrong. Talk me through the reality behind 13 Ghosts in a situation such as this.
Um, well, funnily enough, there's a little bit of legit paranormal theory involved with it because they're capturing ghosts for whatever. I mean, and let's get this out the way. Towards the end, it gets cheesy, unfortunately, but during the meat of it, it's where it's like, whoa. So they're capturing ghosts and they're trying to use their power to get whatever machine going, perhaps for immortality. I can't exactly remember what it was for, but it was to power a machine, and they needed different ghosts who did or died of different causes. So I think the Juggernaut was like a crazy killer with a hammer. You had the lovers, the mother who overfed her child, and very interesting with the ghosts and the personalities. Um, the capturing of them has some legitimacy in reality. Um, First person I think of, his name is Robert Bess, and he created what's called the Parabot. And what this is a box, four-sided box made of some type of plexiglass, if not plexiglass, and it's just straight up glass. And inside of it is a Tesla coil. And ghosts or spirits work off of electromagnetic fields and pulses. They can feed off that electromagnetic energy. So the Tesla coil is supposed to draw them in and keep them in, which they're locked in a prison almost as long as this Tesla coil is going. So 13 Ghosts, we see in there that they have these type of glass with um, interesting wording on it. We'll say it's ancient wording that keep the ghosts in place. They can't pass it and all of that. And there are some inscriptions, some that are said to keep spirits from entering in, from moving from place to place. So them being trapped, it's a little bit of reality there. Them being irritated, more of a reality. um, them being controlled, less of a reality. You will not be able to control a spirit. You can have dominance over them, you can have power over them, but you can't exactly control them. And I guess in a way in the movie, they never really had control either, did they? Um, when things go wrong, because of the irritation from spirit, they're irritated after everything that happens. They can lash out. You can be hurt by them. Yes, it can lead to death. This has happened. It will happen, but it doesn't happen instantly. No ghost or spirit deity, they're not going to snap their fingers, you're dead. They can't exactly interact with this physical reality as we see in the movie. It doesn't work that way. Them wearing special glasses so they can see them and stuff like that. I won't say it's impossible, but I'll say right now it doesn't exist. Um, if you want to see a spirit, then you're going to have to hope it has enough energy to manifest in front of you, and then it'll just leave and it'll be a glimpse. It's almost like when you see something from the corner of your eye, it will be like that. Or they're going to come to you in a dream or something like that. But as far as seeing them and looking at them go this way and that way, no. And them interacting with the physical environment like that, harming you, no. I mean, it has to be something very, very strong, and it will use up all of its energy to interact, which I'm sure you've heard stories of people, levitating
Hmm.
and crawling up a wall or something like that, which they happen, but very, very, very rarely. Uh, the other good thing about 13 Ghosts is they were all human spirits. And that's more likely what you're going to encounter that's angry and disturbed. It's going to be a human spirit. It's not going to be a quote unquote demon or pagan spirit or something like that. It's going to be a disturbed human energy. And I will tell you, the ones you want to watch out for are ones that used to be drug addicts in life, and the ones that were just mentally not all there. You sometimes you carry that when you pass over, and the energy they give off, it's nasty, it's dark, it's depressing, and they feed. And you mentioned fear earlier, with the forbidden,
Hmm.
and it's something to that fear that comes off of us. We always release energy. They soak that mess up, and that's partially why they want us to be afraid. And that's why if you show no fear, you show dominance, they back off. It's like, what's the point? I can't feed off of you. Um, but yeah, the them having the human spirits and everything, that's very, very accurate, even if they didn't intend for it to be. And the way they look as well, they did a good job, because in death, we can look like what we were when we passed away, or we could change it up into something more monstrous if you want, or maybe something a little bit more peaceful and trickster like.
Okay. Okay. Got a couple of comments in the chat. Carrie is cool. 34 said the jackal always freaked her out. The gruff, some of the ghost designs are really good. Reminds me of Silent Hill stuff, which I can
Mhm.
certainly see. There's kind of, like you say, they're human, although well, they were originally human, but there's like a distortion, like the aspects of their personalities are kind of amplified in the spirit realm. Carrie's Cool also says that she has a Tesla purple plate. Hasn't heard of the coil, but very interesting. She'll look into it. Do you know what a Tesla purple plate is?
I've seen them. There was an experiment done with, actually, Darren Evans was part of this experiment, and they were using that. And I think they got contact, but they mixed it, they used it in relation with the Tesla coil.
And Fran Cannon also says, I never felt that they had control. That's why the house needed to move about to funnel them to the device in the center. I mean, I really can't remember too much about this film because it's been so long since I've seen it. I just distinctly remember someone getting their back broken against a corner.
Oh yeah, that was the psychic.
Yeah, that scene. I remember
He-
seeing that as a kid, and that freaking me out.
yeah, I think that was the Juggernaut who did that. A fitting name.
That was very intimidating. Intimidating ghost that one. So yeah, I mean, I guess one of the points that really kind of stuck out to me that you mentioned about there being some trace of reality is the inscriptions that can keep or can ward off spirits. I've always been kind of interested as to, I guess, how do people discover what words work and what words don't, or what
Well,
inscriptions like Latin or.
that's the beauty of it. Basically, anything will work if it's about intent and the energy you put into it. I mean, you can just write out "be gone" if you empower that "be gone." If you believe in it and your intent and your will is to keep things out. Not saying it's going to work 100%, but it will work at least 80%. It, of course, it depends on what's trying to enter, but you know, so it's almost like a weird psychological mind game. Um, the more you believe something, the more energy you feed it, the stronger it becomes. And it's almost creating and bringing it into a reality, even if it's nothing. Um, so with inscriptions, they're just words. It's nothing really to it. They're just words, but because of so much energy over the years that was fed into it, so much belief and will, intent, it becomes something. And it becomes, in this case, we'll say awarding. And it's like, nope, you can't pass here because that's how much power it has. It has more power than you're able to muster to get through.
And I guess something else that's kind of popped into my head, which could apply to a number of these other films. When talking about the reality versus the fiction on screen or in literature, what would you say is more feasible for a spirit to haunt location, which generally like haunted houses, haunted buildings, or spirits being, I suppose, in this case, kind of collected, or spirits latching on to an individual or to an object. What has more kind of basis in reality, or are they all kind of quite possible?
Um, well, they're all possible because they all happen, but chances are they're going to be attached to a location before an object or an individual. And for a spirit to be attached to an individual, I mean, that person has to go to the location and then it'll jump on them for whatever reason. And even then, that spirit is still attached to that location as well. Because if you get them off of you, they go right back. Just whoop. Um, Same with an object. Sometimes spirits are forcibly attached to objects. In fact, I don't want to say his name because I don't agree with what he
Okay.
does, but there's a person who makes scrying mirrors, and he binds spirits to said scrying mirrors to where when you're doing a scrying session or whatever, you will see it. You will see something, and they're not happy. You should not do that. Um,
What's a scrying session? What?
a scrying mirror is a tool. It's a mirror. Usually, it's black, and you look into it. You stare into it, and the energy that you're putting into it, it allows you to see. Well, it's hard to explain. Sometimes you can see spirits through it. Sometimes you'll see your higher self, basically your spiritual side. We'll just to keep it simple. Um, you might be able to see future events. It depends on what you're trying to see, but it's used a lot for shadow work. Shadow work is boy, we're going places, aren't we? Shadow work is basically inner working. It is bringing out things that haunt you, your personal demons, out into the surface, recognizing it, accepting them, and dealing with them instead of hiding it and pretending like it doesn't exist. So it's a form of therapy. Carl Jung actually spoke about shadow work a few times. So very interesting subject to look into.
Yeah.
So with scrying mirrors, some people use it for that. Sometimes they use it to try and contact aliens by just staring into this black mirror. And you literally do that. You stare and you try to get everything out of your mind. And boy, and usually again, sometimes it's a spirit inside of the mirror, and they might show themselves. They might give you information, etc., etc.
Ooh, well, see, the curiosity side of me thinks, oh yeah, that'd be quite interesting to do. But then the trepidation side thinks, oh god, what if I see something that just freaks me out?
Yeah, so you got to be
Gotta be
careful
careful.
with scrying mirrors.
My sister says that she's done that before. It's very interesting how your face changes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, there's a picture on Unexplained Possibilities Facebook page. It might be buried down, but my witch friend, she did a scrying mirror, and she was able to snap a picture at the right time where you can totally see her face looks different. Like it almost looks cat-like
Oh wow.
from when she snapped it. So
I'm gonna have to dig that out. Gonna have to dig that out for sure. That's really
yeah,
piqued my
I will
interest.
hunt it down for
Oh,
you.
definitely. Awesome. Awesome. So I guess do we have anything else relating to the paranormal reality relating to 13 Ghosts, or do you reckon we move on to the next film?
I will say that usually when something is free of its bindings, that's not a good thing
Okay.
because now it's free to roam around and don't be on its bad side. So with 13 Ghosts, the ghosts became free and everything, and they kind of made it seem like it was a good thing. Like, oh, they're free and happy. That's not a good thing. Those are 12 angry ghosts. So yeah, not good. Usually, you want to keep them at that location.
Yeah, I guess there's a difference between ghosts being trapped that, I suppose are just people that have passed and they need to kind of move on to ghosts of like murderers and this, that, and the other, where it's probably best that they stay in the one location and people don't visit it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we're gonna look now at. I think this is probably my most looked forward to actually to discuss on the list because I think it's such an excellent film and it's anything sort of satanic has my interest. Like I'm not like into I'm not religious, I'll just say, but I always find the concept, the iconography, very interesting from a story theatrical aspect. That is the classic 1976 supernatural horror film directed by Richard Donner and written by David Seltzer, The Omen. Boy, howdy, if you've not seen The Omen, what are you doing? Go and watch The Omen. The general plot line, which if people aren't familiar with the film, haven't seen the film, it's probably been satirized in some form of pop culture. The film is it's like I say 1976, but it has had a remake in the mid 2000s, which was I don't really remember. It was all right, but it's obviously not as good. But it also had its own trilogy and a fourth that was a directed to VHS. So the plot follows Damien Thorne, a young child replaced at birth by his father, unbeknownst to his wife, after their biological child dies shortly after birth. A series of mysterious events and violent deaths occur around the family, and Damien enters childhood. They come to learn that he is in fact the prophesied Antichrist. My God, I mean, from a theatrical standpoint, it's such a good story, so original. It's also got one of the best death scenes in it because the death scene kind of comes out of nowhere, but it's all playing part of this higher or lower power, depending on how you want to look at it, instilled in this child who's the Antichrist, who I think is even it's hinted at as birthed out of a jackal or something when they go to find its
Mhm.
the birth parent's actual grave. But before I gush any more about my love for the film The Omen, Mel, let's talk about the reality behind this.
Well, The Omen actually came out too early, in my opinion,
Okay.
and I say that only because the Satanic Panic happened in the 80s. So could you imagine
Oh
if
God.
The Omen came out during the Satanic Panic of the 80s?
It's kind of strange because this is one of the most iconic satanic based films, and yeah, like you say, you'd kind of think that this film might have sparked that satanic panic, but yeah, there was a real buzz around the US, the UK in regards to the influence of satanic media, or as it was kind of described as. But yeah, I guess this kind of beat that era to it really. I guess the sequel.
Yeah, just yeah, the sequels were in the 80s, but I don't talk about the sequels. Uh, well, part 2 maybe, but the other ones,
Still never seen the third.
um,
I do like the second, but I've just never got around to watching the third. Is it not?
you should watch the third just for Sam Neill and just to have a conclusion and pretend the fourth does not
Oh yeah, the
exist.
fourth's not very
Uh,
good.
and the 2006 one, it was okay. I mean, it's almost a shot for shot remake,
Hmm.
just modern. It's okay. I don't think it just can't compare to the original, of
Yeah.
course. Um, but yeah, so the Omen is interesting, being that it's satanic, and the funny thing is, Satanists don't actually believe in Satan or the devil. Um, they Some of them believe in Lucifer, but that's going to go places. So if anyone's religious, and listen, please, I encourage you to, but send the hate mail to Tezz. um,
I
uh,
welcome it.
but when it comes to Satan in general, there is no Satan. Satan is it's a title. It's not an entity. I mean, any entity can say I'm Satan or Satan. It's a title. Uh, so the spawn of Satan is more like, well, which one? It's that type of thing we have happening. But being that this is based off of Abrahamic lore, then usually we say Lucifer is the devil or Satan. So I guess we're looking at a spawn of Lucifer. But then saying that, we have to remember Lucifer is an angel, and he's not demonic, he's not a demon. And the powers that Damien has, I mean, well, angels can do what demons can do, etc., etc. But he's more liable to be a rebel than he is a killer, because Lucifer, he's not a killer. The Morning Star, he's a rebel, and he's never made anyone do anything that they weren't already going to do themselves or weren't capable of doing themselves. And again, this is going places. So it's a little psychological thing to it. But as far as the Antichrist thing, it's very weird because some have said there's been several Antichrists already. When I was younger, I thought George Bush was was him. That's W. I love you. Um, but it's said that it's been several Antichrists already, which I don't know, maybe not, but it would make sense in if we look at it from a duality point of view. When it comes to the occult and the paranormal and witchcraft, all that stuff, it's duality associated with everything. There's a positive, there's a negative. So the possibility of there being, if we take Abrahamic belief at its core and we'll say it's all real, if we take that into consideration, then yeah, realistically, there would be an antichrist and he would do his best to cause a splintering of humanity instead of course, a bringing together of humanity. Um, it would be somewhat chaotic. He wouldn't do miracles. He would cause chaos. Um, he he or she, I should say, they. There we go. They wouldn't necessarily be evil, however, and here Damien's just straight up evil, but they wouldn't necessarily be evil. And the reason for that is because Lucifer, being, if we're using him as an example, is very much about choice. And you got to remember, he's a rebel first. So he would have his spawn, he would make sure he has the ability to choose. You can choose what you want to do. I don't care. So he wouldn't be inherently evil like they show. He might be rebellious, but he would still have choice. And them making him like just straight up evil, that's where it gets a little blurred if I take into consideration the occult things. Um, the the telepathic deaths and the final destination esque deaths, I should say. Um, I don't want to say they're impossible because we are dealing with a supernatural deity. So I'll say it's low probability, but certainly possible, however, extremely unlikely. But then saying that, I'm reminded of and let me know if I'm talking too
No, no,
much. You could
no.
always say shut up.
No, 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 carry
I'm
on.
reminded of something that happened recently. And this is why you always have to be careful with what you deal with. If you make a promise to whatever deity. Um, there was someone who was in some legal trouble, and they come from a Christian background, and they couldn't find the help that they needed. So they went to someone who is a witch and works with various deities. They do high magic, and this person asked and begged, like, please, can you do something to help me? And they said, all right. And they got the demonic entity Belial to help. And that's who you speak to for justice if you want to correct an injustice and bring justice. And sure enough, Belial did whatever Belial does. All he asked was for him to be devoted, the person who asked for help, to be devoted to Belial and to better themselves. That was the sacrifice that's needed because you always have to give something to receive. It, you don't have to kill a baby or kick a puppy, nothing like that. So, this is where it's going to tie in with the omen. He became extremely devoted to Belial, very much so, because he saw the powers firsthand and it's like, yes, yes, yes. But he turned his back on Belial and went back to Christianity, mostly because of his family and what happened with them being Christian. And it's like, no, you're going to burn up if you do this, and blah, blah, blah. Well, shortly after he turned his back on Belial, he did some stuff. Things like literally like a domino effect. Things kept going wrong, wrong, and wrong. And he shot a police officer.
What?
They hunted him down, and he literally had no way out, killed himself. And that could have been from the influence of Belial because the guy went back on his word. So these beings, some of them, depending on the being, are capable of some type of manipulation. And when the omen, we see this. So low probability,
But
but
still.
it is a possibility, just highly unlikely.
Now, talking about the franchise, as we did earlier, Fran the Cannon has mentioned. I completely forgot about this because I never got around to watching it. But there was a 2016 series called Damien, which follows him as an adult. I think I remember hearing about it at the time, and that he's kind of like he's like fighting against being, his
Yeah, he forgot that he was the Antichrist, and it came on A&E, well, A&E over here,
hmm.
and I can't remember who it was that was with him, but someone was trying to get him to go back to being the Antichrist and do evil and all of that. I think it was on for maybe 2 seasons,
Okay.
maybe, but it wasn't bad, but it's not. It's one of those shows where if nothing else is on and this is here, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he forgot that he was the Antichrist, which I don't know how that's possible, but sure,
That's
we'll go with that.
suddenly forget your supposed birthright of being the son of Satan. I guess one of the things which I kind of want to discuss as well, because I always find it so interesting in horror, and it does lead me to a film which I think if we do another show looking at further paranormal influences, I think if have you seen the film Hereditary?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I would.
I have seen Hereditary. I actually got quite upset at Hereditary.
Oh, did you not like it?
Oh no, I thought the film was fine. I mean, for what it is, but they were very disrespectful to an entity. As a matter of fact, it's the same entity that I told you whose energy I felt before we started, King
I
Payman.
did think that I recognised the name, but I didn't want to say,
Yeah.
"Oh, is that Hereditary?" And you go, "Oh, "What are you talking about?"
No, no, no. Yeah, King Payman. So that's a very real entity,
Really?
and they were very disrespectful to him, and that's not the one you be disrespectful to.
Oh, okay. Um,
So, yeah,
I mean,
I did like it, but that's the only part I didn't like. It's like, oh boy,
I guess
it's
I
not good.
wondered if I didn't know if it was based on a true entity or deity, or they'd made it up for the film. But I guess one of the things that I wanted to discuss with this film, and the reason why I mentioned Hereditary as well, is it's I suppose there is the supernatural element to it because it's the influence on the people and their beliefs, but the cult aspect. So in The Omen, Damien very much isn't alone. I mean, there's instances where he's kind of almost protected by jackals and demon dogs. When his Gregory Peck's character is trying to search for the truth, but you've also got these people. There's doctors. There's the nanny, I think, and there's a few other characters who are kind of helping behind the scenes because they know, who Damien is, and they're kind of part of that. And talking about Hereditary, you've also got those other characters who are seemingly kind of hidden in plain sight of part of this cult. Um, what's the kind of the reality behind the paranormal of, I guess, a cult serving a supernatural entity?
Oh, that's very common. Uh, very common. I mean, you have Luciferianism, which they sort of serve Lucifer. Um, as a matter of fact, I mean, she's not in a cult, but last week on Unexplained Possibilities, I had on Anna Nora, and she is a lumen of Lucifer and a priestess of Lilith. So she serves them. Um, then, over there, you guys actually have the Order of Nine Angels. When I say over there, I mean in
Yeah.
England. Uh, they could be, oh, there are a lot of things, but they serve Baphomet. They're more of a cult than a traditional cult than anything. But yeah, they serve Baphomet. Um, then you have the some more of the ancient deities cults, such as I'm trying to think of one that everyone would know, a name that everyone would know, but then saying that, I'm not sure everyone would know it. Uh, I mentioned Belial, and there's a cult of Belial. With the Golden Dawn. There we go. That's a better example. With the Golden Dawn, the Hermetic Order of Golden Dawn, they would do high magic, which means ceremonial, ritualistic, magical practices to try and connect with beings allegedly higher than us. And most of them were Egyptian gods or Babylonian gods, etc., etc., and they were devoted to them, and they kept their stuff secret. So that's the thing about cults. They keep their mess secret. They don't want the world to know. They don't want the world to um, to learn the secrets on how they got power or what they're trying to bring in or not bring in. And there are some darker cults that will serve darker entities. And unfortunately, yeah, they do human sacrifice. They do animal sacrifice. There is a cult of Moloch,
I
and
recognize that name.
they, hmm?
I recognize Moloch.
Yeah, for whatever reason, he's growing in popularity. I don't know why, but and mind you, these are the extremists. Like this isn't normal, but the cult of Moloch, they will sacrifice babies. In fact, sometimes they will get women pregnant so they can force abortion them, so they can sacrifice that human to Moloch.
Oh my!
Yeah,
And that that's modern. That's
this is
oh my
modern.
god.
Yeah,
Woof. Well,
but and you see why they want to keep it
well, of
secret.
course. I guess just to kind of round off the cult aspect. Part of me was initially going to inquire about in kind of modern cults, and when I talk about cults in the kind of the mainstream aspect, that's your Jim Jones or these other kind of end of the world type cults. But talking more, I suppose, about the supernatural, like deities, gods, demons based cults. Do you? But initially, I was going to inquire about are members. I know they was to keep it secret. More inclined to those that will live on a commune and you know be part of the cult from that aspect, or talking about like the Omen and Hereditary, and I suppose also like something like Rosemary's Baby, where you have these members of cults who are people in high society, people that like elderly couples, and people that you just generally you wouldn't you'd go past on the street and wouldn't think, oh, they're going to be part of a satanic cult. Um, One thing that I wanted to kind of bring up was I probably should have done the research on this beforehand, but it's come to my head now. There was video footage I remember seeing, and you never know if this is genuine or faked, of a high society cult gathering, and I believe it's in the Hollywood Hills. There's some fenced off area.
Talking about Bohemian Grove.
Probably, I think that sounds about right.
Yeah, Okay. That that would have been from Alex Jones, most likely. If it's Bohemian Grove. No, no, no. You said Hollywood Hills, so
I'm sure
no.
it's the Hollywood.
Bohemian Grove is way north.
I'll have to have a look and I'll pop it in like in the
Yeah.
Discord. But there was, it might actually be the Alex Jones. There's basically this, something is happening in this kind of fenced, closed off area with members of high society. But then there's weird fires and cloaks and
The Owls.
yeah.
Bohemian Grove. Okay.
But what's that all about?
Okay, so I'm gonna say a couple of things real quick. So, real quick, you mentioned if if people in cults are more likely to live in a communal type thing or the society. Well, it's both, but it depends on the cult. I've noticed that the people who are into the aliens and all that, it's more of a group thing. Think Heaven's Gate.
David Koresh.
You know, yeah. So it's more usually with them, it's more of a group thing, whereas the more demonical, good lord, demonic cults and them, they're a bit more secretive, but they're usually people you would never know, you never suspect. It's like, wow, really? Which, be careful who you speak to. Um, Now, going to Bohemian Grove and the high society thing, I wish I could answer that, but I have no idea what's up with that except for we can go into some conspiracy theory stuff. When it comes to owls, owls
Okay.
have a place not only in witchcraft but extraterrestrial as well. It's believed that the owls are the shepherds and common man, us, are the lambs, and the owls watch over the shepherds. And it has a connection with this world supposedly being, I guess you could say, livestock
Right.
in a way, or I don't want to go there too much, but yeah, and the owls are being presented sacrifices to please them for whatever reason.
Yeah.
Um, so it's very weird. And now I just thought about the fourth kind. I don't know if you ever
Oh,
seen that movie.
I think I have the alien abduction film.
Yeah, yeah, that, the marketing for that was really good. But but ultimately, I have no idea what's up with Bohemian Grove and people from high society doing that. I know that's a gathering that they've been doing for a long time, like centuries, I think, at least 2 centuries. But other than that, I have no clue, none at all.
I think maybe a future episode of this show is going to have to be a deep dive into cults because it's something I'm very interested in and I don't know near enough about. I've always been a bit too scared to dig too deep. I don't want to appear on anyone's radar. Uh,
Yeah, well, and to circle it back around to the Omen, um, I do believe that the cult in there was slightly based off of an actual cult, and they were Satan worshippers, and they did want to bring forth the Antichrist for whatever reason. I guess it's because they felt slighted by God and humanity in general, and they would defile temples and just do whatever. Um, and in a weird way, that's sort of what Satanism is about, but then it isn't. Um, Real Satanists will not. They're not nasty people. The real ones, the people who are posers are, but the real one, they're not nasty people. They're very intelligent. Um, they have their own rules, and part of why they're Satanists is because they want to rebel against what society deems normal. They don't want to be controlled. And in a way, with the Omen, Damien, in an odd way, shows that. Even though he's pure evil, he still shows that he does not want to be controlled. He can't be controlled, and he wants to. He's actually an anarchist, in a strange way, you know. But yeah,
I mean, yeah, it's I remember many years ago in my teenage years, out of curiosity, I picked up the Satanic Bible, the Anton LaVey
yeah,
book, and I was very surprised by it that the majority of the book. I mean, I know the last sort of chapters looking at these the seven doors, I think, to hell. At that point I it wasn't really for me. Um, but I was very surprised that it was very much the writings were kind of saying, look, Christianity says you can't do this, you can't do that, you shouldn't enjoy this, shouldn't enjoy that. Whereas their viewpoint is very much, look, shouldn't have these kind of controls as long as you're not hurting anyone and you're not, kind of breaking like kind of general laws or whatever. You should have free will, that sort of thing. And it was like, okay, not what I
yeah,
initially expected from picking up a book called the Satanic Bible.
yeah. That's the thing is there is no Satan in Satanism.
Uh,
And with Anton, he was interesting because he's also a troll. He was very theatrical, I'll say, very theatrical, but intelligent too. But yeah, it's about rebelling and rejecting. It's not about hurting or killing. It's like, no, live your life. Don't be constrained by things that aren't natural to begin with. Like, don't you lie, it's bad. Well, everyone, yeah, sure, it's probably not the best in the world, but what if you're in a moral dilemma where you have to lie to save someone's life?
yeah.
Or like, no premarital sex. But why? It's fun, come on. Like, nope, you're gonna burn. Why? I mean, no, it's just those type of things.
Well, let's move on to our next film to discuss. That being the Woman in Black, which is a 2020 no sorry 2020 2012 gothic supernatural horror film directed by James Watkins, written by Jane Goldman, and it's the second adaptation of Susan Hill's 1983 novel of the same name, which was previously filmed in 1989. Now, I've not seen the 1989 adaptation, but I've heard it's meant to be very scary. The plot, set in early 20th century England, follows a oh god, I've lost my place. Follows a young, recently widowed lawyer who travels to a remote village where he discovers that the vengeful ghost of a scorned woman is terrorizing the locals. This was a Hammer Film Productions, Hammer being a British studio that was huge in the 60s for Dracula, Frankenstein films. It's kind of started to have a bit of a comeback, but I don't know if there's been that many more recent Hammer horror films. But it in the UK it had a bit of controversy because it received a 12A certificate from the BBFC, despite several cuts being made. Which I don't know why that's controversial. If it's cuts, then surely it will get a lower age rating. There was a sequel in 2015, The Woman in Black, Angel of Death, which I don't remember being great. But The Woman in Black was decent, had some good jump scares in it, and yeah, it's talking about a vengeful ghost of a scorned woman. Talk to us about the reality in this paranormal.
Oh, well, before that, I have to say I love this movie. um I absolutely love this movie, to the point where I refuse to see the sequel because it's no way it could live up to it. Yeah, so I won't watch it. I refuse. Um, and adding on to that, the atmosphere, that gothic atmosphere, and just how they use the shots and oh man,
The,
I love this
the
movie.
location where
So
it was kind of that. There's a couple of spots like that in the UK where you have kind of almost off mainland little villages that are kind of only accessible when the tides are low. I remember that being quite freaky because the tide's high at night and things are going bump in the night. You've not really got anywhere that you can go.
Um, so this one is a little weird to point out the reality because so much of it is pretty reality based. And then the stuff that isn't, I mean, good Lord, it is not. Now, the woman in black, we'll start off with her. She, in general, would actually probably be a woman in white before she would be in black, which I'm sure everyone has heard stories about the woman in white or the specter of a woman wearing a white dress and all of that. It doesn't necessarily mean a bad omen, but it doesn't necessarily mean a good omen
Mm.
either. But it does represent that something not so good has transpired. Um, and a vengeful spirit, that very real. And how they had it, you notice that the woman in black throughout the movie, she didn't actually harm Daniel Radcliffe's character. What's his name?
Arthur Kip.
Kip. Kip. Yeah. She didn't actually harm Kip. And this is more how spirits work versus, 13 Ghosts where they're physical and tossing you around. But 13 Ghosts is also more of a popcorn
Yeah.
movie too. Um, this is more psychological, I would say, and noticing things in the background where you're questioning your reality, like, what the heck? You know, that's what they got so good with this because that's what happens if you're in a haunted location. It's little things that then add up to big things. Uh, a chair just suddenly moving on its own. I mean, now it won't keep doing that, but it will do it a little bit, just enough for you to notice it and like, did I just see that? To where you will investigate. Hearing little footsteps, dolls that seem to move by themselves, and you're just questioning yourself, like, what it is this in my head? Am I going crazy? What's going on? And having dreams, I want to say, and just feeling off. That's the major thing. That off-putting feeling when you're walking around and you can never feel comfortable. That is so freaking real, and they nailed it in here. Um, the woman in black showing up how she does and all of that. That's Hollywoodish or well British ish.
They kind of from memory, don't they, make use of her kind of appearing in windows and mirrors, if I
Yeah,
remember rightly.
in Windows. So that part is, well, yeah, I told you about the mirrors. Very accurate, but at the same time, she lingers too long. I mean, I know part of that though is for the audience itself, just to get that visual representation. But things happen quick. Oh, I wish I could snap my fingers. I was born without that ability. Someone snap their fingers for me. I don't care who. There you go. Things happen like that within a snap. It's very quick. If it's lingering and you see something and you're like, huh, that's a problem. They should not be able to do that. If they're able to do that, you run. Just run. That's the only real issue I have with it. But her being a spirit of vengeance, there are a lot of spirits that are PO'd and they will affect people. Um, and sometimes there is no way to quelch that anger or whatever it is that's disturbing them. Oftentimes, and usually these type of movies, they try to have a happy ending where, uh, like, oh, here's the doll you were missing. Now you're happy and you can move on, and or you just need love. That's a big one. Like, give it love. Funny story about that actually. Um, in this, not so much. Spoiler alert: things don't end well.
No.
um, and that's reality. Reuniting something like, oh, see, look here, this is what you missed, right? No, it doesn't. No, it's PO. What? let's do it like this, Tess. Someone makes you mad and they say, "Oh, here's a lolly. This will make you feel better. This is what you wanted, right?" Would that make you feel better if someone just really made you mad?
It probably wouldn't help, no.
No. So same thing with the spirit. It's like, no, I'm PO'd because of an injustice that happened, and I'm taking it out on everyone. The only thing that's going to get rid of them is a forced exorcism.
Okay.
And, so I love how they did this because the woman in black was upset about her child being killed. I want to say it was a carriage ride that took him out. I'm trying to separate the movie from the book
Yeah.
uh, because the book's a little bit different. But she was mad about that. She already had to pretend like she wasn't the kid's mother, and now he was taken away, and she's PO'd, not happy, and you carry that anger with you in death. That's why they say, don't die angry, man. Die with peace in your heart because you take it with you. You take that mess with you. And when they try to reunite Jeanette, I think that's her name, with her kid, she didn't even look at it, man. She went right after Kip.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? It's like, no, you're not getting it. I'm angry, and my kid is gone. He moved on. So no, I'm coming for you. Like, it's nothing. It's nothing you could do about it
There is no
with the
happy
spirit of
ending,
vengeance.
yeah.
No, it's absolutely not. They're going to get what they want, and if they don't get what they want, they will figure out a way to get what they want. And it's very much a reality. I mean, it might not be to the extreme of I'm going to snap my fingers and kill you like that. And that's the other thing. It didn't just happen. This was something that took a moment to build up to get to that part because ultimately, what did she want? She wanted to kill his kid. And with spirits, they have all the time in the world. They're very patient. And that's what happens in reality. But usually, though, with spirits of vengeance, they drive you crazy before they bring some type of physical harm. Not saying they can't do physical harm like scratches and all that. That does occur, but they break you down mentally, and then they get you because when you're broken down mentally, it starts to develop the stages of possession. And if they possess you, that's all she wrote. It's a whole different story, which is interesting that she didn't try to possess him because I do think that's where they messed up a little bit. I think Jeanette would have tried to possess Kip in reality.
Yeah. Well, I see that just looking on the Wikipedia that one of the deaths kind of from the woman in black is where the woman in black goads one of the village girls into burning herself. So that kind of then ties into what you say about the influence and kind of breaking them down, and the got in this girl's ear and didn't
Mhm.
physically burn her. Woman in black didn't burn her, but led her to the girl burning herself due to this influence from the ghost.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna have to
So
give this film a rewatch because I saw it when it came out. I enjoyed it. I saw the sequel when it came out. We won't talk about that.
yeah, that's your mistake
Yeah.
right there. But no, it's definitely worth another watch.
Oh, for sure.
It's just really good in my opinion. And even on the poster here, you see the woman in black in the background, and that's what happens throughout the film. She is in the background, and that's what happens with spirits. As a matter of fact, um, when I was speaking to a friend, we were video chatting. Luckily, this was one of my guides. His name's Raphael. Video chatting like you and I are, and well, I was in another space, but he showed up. I saw him show up over my right shoulder, just poof, and through the viewing screen. I was like, "What the heck?" He jumped and looking around, like, "Did I just see that?" And like I got my pendulum because I was like, "Whoa, did I just see Raphael?" And Raphael, if you can you show off what you were doing with the pendulum, please? He's going in a circle, all excited. Uh, you know, uh, just for the people, can you stop moving just to see that I'm not too crazy? And as you can see, it's coming to a stop. And can you give us a big circle, please? A little bit more momentum. And now keep going, keep going, keep going. Please, more. Okay, thank you. And, so he was doing all of that. And I'm thinking, like, what the heck just happened? and all. So her being like just around, hidden here, hidden there. Yeah, my gosh.
Definitely, definitely one I'm going to have to give a rewatch. Now, this next one we're going to chat about, it's recently been voted. I say voted. I think it's been awarded by some film body. They calculated that this is the scariest film ever made. Now, I wouldn't agree that it's the scariest film ever made. I couldn't say what I think was, but I remember really enjoying this film and thinking it's very inventive. The 2012 supernatural horror film, directed and co-written by Scott Derrickson, Sinister. Wow, this film had a great marketing campaign. Really utilized. I kind of want to say it's not found footage, but it utilizes this home video aesthetic form part of the story, which is basically it's a true crime writer, Ellison Oswald, played by Ethan Hawke. He discovers a series of Super 8 home videos depicting grisly murders found in the attic of the new house that him and his family have moved into, and that instantly puts the family in danger. Um, I thought this film was great. We've got, like I say, these Super 8 videos that are just really quite creepy, and they're really quite inventive. These different murders, which just basically kill an entire family, except for one member of the family. One, the child, is always missing. Won't, the film's it's 10 years old now, but I won't say too much if people haven't seen it. But it also there's again this a being, a supernatural being, who initially has these moments of appearing in these kind of. They obviously prolong it slightly because it's cinema, so the audience has to at least acknowledge it, but kind of blink and you miss it moments where, oh, did I just see a face in the middle of the trees outside? That sort of thing. Um, what, let's talk about the reality behind Sinister. This one's definitely going to be very very intriguing.
Yeah, it's a creepy movie. That's the first thing. The second thing is this is I would say more folklore based because we're dealing with Bugal. I want to say his name. I'm sure I'm butchering
Yeah,
that.
Bughul.
Uh, which is essentially the boogeyman. And oh, I wish Lawrence was here right now so we could talk about bloody bones.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, he's essentially the boogeyman, and but really in the movie, the story, he's a pagan deity of some sort. He's not a real deity,
Okay.
but yeah, he's made up, and I don't think he's based off of any real life deity from what I've researched and can tell. Just purely for this movie, which kudos to them, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Uh, and we're looking at again the correct way a spirit does something, and that's through patience and a bit of buildup to get the end result, manipulation, influence, and we see that because they cause you to get obsessed with something and you don't even realize you're becoming obsessed. And once that happens, you're pretty much theirs. It's just little whispers that are needed next. And if you're open to it, because some people are more open to the influence of spirits than others, then they can get you. They can get you to do things. Oh, I'm trying to think of the word. Oh, what is it? Oh gosh darn it. He'll come to me later. It's gonna bug me now. But they can get you to do little things. And that's what we see throughout the movie because Ellis, he's thinking he's smart. He lied to his family to begin with, and he's trying to figure this out, like what's going on here. He's trying to find his inspiration, and now he's dealing with a supernatural being that is haunting his family, and it wants that energy, it wants blood, and that's something that's accurate, but maybe not in the sense of everyone's going to die. But there are you know what, I'm not even going to say there are deities. Every single spiritual thing, angel, demon, human, others, gods, goddesses, if you're dealing with them, if you're working with them, one of the offerings you can give them is blood. And 99% of the time, they will always accept that because it is literally a piece of you being offered to them, a piece that has a lot of energy in it. And they feed off of that, or some of them can anyway.
Yeah.
Sometimes they just want to see how far you'll go. It's ridiculous, but it's like, "Well, are you really this stupid?" Like, okay, stupid. And that alone could be a test. But him wanting blood, Bugal, accurate. It's accurate. And that's what he wanted. He wanted to feed. And he created he created a way to kill the family. What was it? It wasn't moving into the house that gets you. He just scares you half to death and takes control over you. It's leaving the house
Hmm.
that gets you. And I don't think they showed this, but one of the little girls, I can't remember her name, he was able to take over. And I don't believe they showed how he did it, but kids are susceptible, a little bit more susceptible to the paranormal than us as we're older. We're a bit more closed off, we're a bit more jaded, whereas a kid it's like a blank canvas, completely open, and you can get in there.
Well, I
um
guess I guess kind of similar to how Pazuzu in The Exorcist
yeah,
initially this kid whose parents gone through a divorce. The kid's kind of lonely, and find a Ouija board and start chatting to this friendly. They're going to be have a bit more open minded to
yeah,
someone responding and not think it's anything nefarious. So yeah, that totally makes sense that they were going to be more influenced.
yeah. So real quick about the Exorcist. So Pazuzu is a real deity. Um, I'm trying to remember if he's Sumerian or Babylonian. I think it's, or no, he's Mesopotamian, I want to say. Um, but that is a real deity. He is a wind god. They used him in the wrong capacity in The Exorcist. It has nothing to do with Christianity, but like the Lord's Prayer and all that, that wouldn't work on him. That he'd laugh at that. But he is considered an evil entity, but then at the same time you can look at him as a anti-hero because the statues of Pazuzu are actually used, and he will protect you from something that's an even greater evil. So if you don't have statues of him and this other greater evil comes, then well, you're up a creek without a paddle. So it's very interesting with Pazuzu. But anyway, um, yeah. So the little girl was influenced, and I can't say she was possessed because she wasn't possessed, but she was influenced and doing the bidding of this Bugal, and Ellis played right into his hands. And that's the thing people need to realize. We are not smarter than these deities. We're not. They're thousands upon thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of years old. They are a natural energy. They're born from this world, most of them. And they understand the inner workings, they understand the human psyche, they can see possible futures. They know what we're going to do before we do it. It's no outsmarting them. So trying to play that game, you already lost. And they could be in multiple places at once. So it sucks, man. I remember we spoke about him briefly, but Zozo, the Z entity Ouija board
Yeah.
demon, I remember it was an investigation for live sci-fi, and they were using Ouija board, and essentially they said like, how can you be in in several places at once? And he's basically said people are stupid because they don't understand this. It's their time doesn't matter if you're energy, and you can be in several places and this and that. So they can be in several places. They can see beyond. Um, Now, I don't know what was up with that green snot or that green stuff. I don't know what was up with that.
Yeah.
Uh, I suppose we can consider it ectoplasma, but at the same time, it's like, I don't know what this is. I think it was just to have a visual aid for viewers to go by. And yeah, I don't know. That was just weird. I mean, I would have rather them just have the little girl sneak up and crack him upside the head or something. I think that would have been better.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a couple. I mean, I do really enjoy Sinister. The sequel I thought was quite forgettable. I don't really remember what happened in the sequel.
See, I won't watch it
Mm,
because I like this one too much.
yeah, it was it's an inferior film. My only kind of little gripe with Sinister was near the end. I thought you maybe saw too much of Bagul. I thought he was really effective when you're just seeing his face creep up, or it's in the background if you look close enough. And I think there was one particular jump scare which I think a lot of people liked, but I always thought was a little bit corny when he goes into the attic and he sees all the dead kids, but then also
Mm.
Bagul's head suddenly appears in front of him. I think it was just the way that it appeared was, I think, less is more, and
Yeah.
I much prefer when you kind of like with the Exorcist, as we mentioned, the flashes of Pazuzu's kind of true face. I always thought those were excellent because they only happen like 3 times or 4 times in the whole film, and they're only for
Yeah, it keeps a mystery,
yeah,
and it also forces you to use your imagination as well. I think one of the worst things we can do in or they can do in horror movies is show the actual killer or monster or whatever. Don't do that unless, unless it's for a very, very good reason.
yeah,
But don't do that. Keep them hidden. And again, it draws you back in to where like, oh my gosh, what would I do? You can't see this freaking thing. How do you fight it? You know, so I'm with you. Less is more when it comes to horror.
definitely.
Unless it's just a gore fest, then have
Well,
at it.
yeah, you know what you're in for with those films, so yeah,
Yeah, but that's how they work too. They don't show themselves, or if they show themselves, it's going to be briefly, and it will happen in dreams. That's where you're most vulnerable and you're most open. So be careful, people who have vivid dreams. You're inviting stuff in.
I guess kind of a kind of it came out at a similar sort of time as Sinister, but talking about dreams and astral projection. The first Insidious film that was kind of part
Mhm.
of that was this kid inherited from his father this ability to basically astral project, leave his body, but in doing so, that's almost creating like a beacon for
Yeah,
other beings that well, this body's vacant, or you're opening yourself up to not so friendly visitors.
you have no idea how absolutely right you are. So astral projection, that's a real thing. People do it, and when you go to this astral world and you're not supposed to be there, you're still living, you do set off a beacon. And it's like, whoa, what is that? You're different. You're not supposed to be here. Now, you can run into some nasty stuff. Like, and I'm not just saying that for theatrics or anything. Like, you legit can run into some nasty stuff that you have to fight off that might come back with you. Very parasitic like things as well that want your energy to just feed and perhaps grow stronger in their own way. Um, so you do leave yourself vulnerable. And it said if you're going to astral project, always have someone with you, and don't do it for more than 10, 15 minutes. But when you're astral projecting, you don't know time. Time is non-existent. So what feels like 5 minutes is 5 hours. So it's very interesting with that. But yeah, you have to be careful. You have to train. You have to know what you're doing. And, if you do astral project, end up on the astral realm, don't think you're gonna do a freaking Kamehameha wave or some mess. Um, so if anyone saw a review I did, they would understand that
Okay.
reference. So
Um, we'll look on to we'll go on to our last film to assess the reality of this evening. Now, this is a film that I I did I enjoy it? I did enjoy it, except for the ending. I think it came out at a similar time to another film that had a very similar twist ending, very sort of different film. But I think because of me seeing what was The Sixth Sense at a similar sort of time to seeing this film, it dampened my opinion on it a bit. Now, I haven't seen the film in like 20 years, so I probably do need to give it a re-watch. But in terms of the concept, we're going to be finishing looking at 2001's The Others. It's an English language, Spanish, gothic supernatural psychological horror film that was written, directed, and scored by Alejandro Amenábar. It stars Nicole Kidman, Fionnuala Flanagan, Christopher Eccleston, Elaine Cassidy, Eric Sykes, Alakina Mann, and James Bentley. It was a huge success. I believe it was highlighted for the direction, the screenplay, the score, atmosphere, and Kidman's performance. I haven't got a tiny synopsis other than the main sort of plot, but essentially it's set in 1945. It's the immediate aftermath of World War II. Follows the character Grace Stewart, which lives in her remote country house in Jersey, the Channel Islands, that was formerly occupied by the Germans. And she has her two children, Anna and Nicholas, who have an unspecified disease characterized by photosensitivity. I mean, without kind of going into the full general kind of plot, the I'll say spoiler alerts here now, but this film is
yeah.
21 years old, but you can't really talk about the paranormal aspects without going into spoilers. There's we basically find out there's a lot of freaky things happening in the world around them, but they're essentially almost stuck in this house, and the reason for that is that they are all ghosts. Is that correct?
Hmm.
Yeah. So you're seeing a film, and it's kind of similar to The Sixth Sense in terms of the twist, but also in that you're seeing a film from the perspective of people who don't know that they're dead. So let's talk about the reality behind that. I guess that is it quite feasible that you could encounter ghosts, or there could be ghostly presence who just aren't aware that they've passed on.
Yes. Um, I, I've I have quite a few paranormal investigator friends, and we speak about this from time to time. And they have said they've encountered spirits who didn't know they passed. And that's why, if you are a paranormal investigator, you have to be careful with your questioning. And a stupid question that is asked that really shouldn't be asked is, do you know you're dead? Because if they don't know and they're hearing this, because they're trapped. It really is something where you can be trapped for whatever reason. We don't know why or how. Sometimes there is a being that is keeping you there, but yeah, sometimes there are beings that will keep someone from moving on. But as far as why they're there on their own, we don't know, because sometimes I guess it's just they don't realize. And asking, "Are you dead?" that could cause a traumatic effect, and that could mess them up, and it could cause them to just flip out and go crazy, and who knows what else. Um, so them being dead and seeing things from the other side, it's something to it. Um, because we don't exactly know what it is that ghosts see of us. We could be the ghosts. There actually is a theory floating out there that dimensions are just layered on top of each other. And if that's the case, then us in this physical world would look like ghosts to those in the spiritual world. And it's like, what is that? What's happening here? Because they might not remember their physical life.
Well, I guess just I've just sort of been familiarising myself again with the general plot that the Nicole Kidman and her, well, Grace Stewart and her children are they're believing that there's something paranormal going on in their house and that there are ghostly presences there without realizing that actually a seance is being held by the people who've gone in there now, the actual people that are alive, which is how we find out about what happened. And I guess, and again, I really do need to rewatch this film because just looking at these plot elements, it's not just a case of Nicole Kidman's character and the children suddenly died, and let's say if it was a bomb hit or something that was like an immediate impact, and that they're now in the ghosty kind of realm but aren't aware, so on and so forth. There was actually Grace, Nicole Kidman's character, smothered the children to death with a pillow in a fit of despair before then committing suicide. So she has got into this horrific kind of mode, done something awful, then committed suicide. But now, without kind of, I guess she's almost forgotten that aspect because who knows how much is retained when you go into that ghost world, and is thinking that the people that are alive now are the ghosts invading her space, and I mean, that's got to be traumatic. Realizing
Mm,
this repressed event before committing suicide is the actual truth. And
yeah. Um, eh, Adding on to that, there's a scene where the daughter, I can't think of her name, but she notices her mother's acting weird, and her mother sees her daughter, and her daughter looks like an old woman and everything. It's like, who are you? Where's my daughter? And she gets her and starts strangling her, and it's like, I am your daughter. And eventually she snaps out of it and she sees her daughter. She's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? And I'm mentioning this for a couple of reasons. The first is the daughter runs to her brother and says, "Oh my God, it's happening again! Like what she did before." Even though the daughter doesn't know she's
yeah,
dead, she remembers being strangled. The brother does not, and he's like, "What are you talking about? What do you mean it's happened before?" And what happened was, I believe it was a psychic who was trying to get through to the little girl, and or it was the little girl who aged. God darn it, I can't remember exactly what it was, but anyway, she saw something from the other side essentially, and it caused her to freak. And part of her freaking out too is a little bit of cabin fever, which quite a few people have experienced with, the pandemic
of course,
happening.
yeah,
And it causes you to go crazy. And that's what was happening again, because in her physical life, she got overly protective, and she wouldn't let the kids out because of the photosensitivity, and her husband is away at war, and it caused her to slowly snap. And we can see that happening in long-term isolation, and that sometimes carries over as a spirit, where you're very protective of your space because it's your space. No, this is mine. I can't leave it. You become obsessed and attached in a way. And that's what we see there. Even though she doesn't know it, she doesn't realize it. We see that. That's another reality that I think they got right, although it might be unintentionally.
I mean, the story of the finale of the film, the realization. It reminds me, talking earlier on about Supernatural and where I've been rewatching season one again. One of the episodes of that deals with a ghost who basically is. Obviously, they've dramatized that more as this ghost is attacking people, but the general story is that the ghost, in a fit of mania, panic, rage, whatever, in a out of normal experience, drowns their child or smothers their child before then killing themselves, and isn't aware, in the ghostly sense, that they can't accept that, or they're not really aware of that kind of occurring. And I guess that must be that, Supernatural. I guess the others must have based that on some tale or some story in the paranormal world of that sort of thing occurring. And I guess, like you say, there's that kind of isolation, that mania where a person can just snap, have a moment, and
Yeah.
realize that they've done something awful and kill themselves.
Yeah, unfortunately, um, that's why they say long-term isolation. It's not a good thing,
Uh,
which I'm surprised I'm still sane. Um, I think, I don't know, knock on wood. Uh, but yeah, it's very interesting in that sense. It's kind of scary too
yeah.
because wow, the sun is now coming in. Curse you, sun.
What
Um,
time is it over there for you, Mel?
it's 3 p.m.
Oh, okay, okay.
Uh, oh gosh darn it, I just
Oh
lost my
God,
train of
sorry.
thought. Oh no, it's fine. It happens. I'm absent-minded. What was I saying? Long-term isolation. It happens. Ah, well, fruitcake. I can't remember. But anyway, we take this stuff with us. Sometimes we forget, sometimes we don't, and then if it's just thrown on you, that could cause issues. I mean, again, we see it in everyday life. Let's say a traumatic event happens to you and you repress that son of a monkey's uncle because, you don't want to remember it. You don't need to remember it. And then someone brings it up, it triggers that memory, and you haven't dealt with it. And it's just like, oh my gosh, oh my God. You start to panic and freak.
Yeah,
And now we have someone who is already in isolation and a homebody and overprotective. Now you have this weird paranormal mess happening, which at first you don't want to believe. And the cool thing about this is, and this is why I really like this movie, it's the silence.
mm,
It's a very eerie silence about it. It's a very quiet movie. And the things that are happening, we can't tell if it's happening in her head right away or if it's actually outside influence. And that's, like I said, throughout this entire show, that's what happens when you deal with ghosts and spirits. You question your sanity. You question yourself, like, is this legit? Or am I just going crazy? And with the little kids speaking to Victor, I think the one who was
yeah,
alive, and they're speaking to him, and he's like, "What? We moved here. Like, who are you? You're ghosts. You're not supposed to be here. Like, no, you're the ghost." And they tell the mom and I mean, I think it's just such a brilliant, weird turnaround. Um, in that sense, while Grace is just doesn't know what's happening, and she's getting more irritated, I want to say, and losing herself more and more, and that could possibly be what happens. with ghosts. And then saying that, this is interesting because he'll bring up something I'll
Mm.
explain. They're living the same life over and over, like, and who knows how long they've been
Of
living
course, yeah.
in 1945 in their mind. Who knows? And to the point where, you might say, oh, it's just residual energy, which if they were really clever, they would have said this was residual energy. This actually isn't happening. For those of you who don't know, residual energy, we're all made up of energy, and we leave energy behind wherever we go. We touch something, energy goes into it, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera. Residual energy is, think of it like a projection of our lives playing out, even though we're not actually there. It's just the energy we leave behind doing whatever it was we were doing with said energy. So, not intelligent spirits, but just living life.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just, it's crazy how good they got that unintentionally, though. Um, and the subtleness of it, because again, it's almost like it's trying to make it seem like she's losing her mind, but at the same time, maybe she isn't.
Yeah, you've got the dichotomy of, is there something supernatural's going on in her house? Is it all in her head? And I suppose, watching it for the first time, you're not gonna be thinking, "Well, actually, she is the supernatural, the paranormal,
No,
entity." It's you're experiencing it from her perspective, but you're not ever initially, without knowing the film, gonna assume that that perspective is, deceased. It's
right.
very clever. It's very clever.
It is. I mean, and different from The Sixth Sense, I think. Different enough anyway.
Yeah.
But you went in there already, like, you probably had an inkling because you saw The Sixth Sense first. Me, it was the other way around. I saw this first, and then I saw The Sixth Sense.
Yeah. I
So,
I think when I'd seen them, like, Sixth Sense was very huge for its twist ending and whatnot, and I think I was probably much younger and didn't really have the same sort of patience that I do for a
mhm,
slow burn, psychological, type film. And as soon as I have an inkling that the film's gonna have a twist, it kind of almost puts me off, even if that twist can be good. I I start thinking, oh, it's a twist for a twist's sake, without, which is kind of a bit disparaging to the general narrative, because in this film, it definitely does seem like one I should definitely watch again. And I maybe just was too young and naive at the time to really appreciate it, because it does sound very good.
yeah, I thought it was a good film, and they did a seance in there, which was interesting. I've seen seances, and they didn't actually show it from the perspective of the people. Of course, they showed it from the perspective of the ghosts. And I thought that was so interesting because yeah, that's right. The older woman searching for him is creepy and scary looking.
Yeah,
And it's like, wow, is this how they perceive us? Because we really don't know how they perceive us exactly. We might have a small inkling every now and then, but we don't truly know. We might look hideous and villainous, or we might look like angels.
yeah,
So it's very interesting.
yeah,
But I'll add real quick, when it comes to seances, though, the more people there, the more energy that is being given off, the more likely the results. But it could have negative consequences because now you can almost be irritating a spirit that's there, and which we actually saw. Grace got
yeah,
irritated. She got she actually got irritated, and it will cause them to lash out and do things to try and get you. Like, no, I'm going to get you. Like, you're done for now. So seances, while powerful, especially in a group, a large group, they can have negative effects. And if you don't exercise that spirit or get it to leave or whatever, or make peace with it, then it could cause an escalation in activity.
I guess one kind of final final question on the subject of seances. And you always see representations of it in different types of films, and yeah, it's normally from the perspective of people doing it, and things are crashing around and whatnot. I guess my question is, bear in mind, I've never really, I've been on one ghost hunt where there was a kind of a type of séance, but more of I guess just like a reading type thing. In séance or a Ouija board type setting, if they're looking to reach out and speak to, let's say, a particular individual, so I guess more of a séance than a Ouija board, maybe. But in an instance where a group is maybe looking to speak to a particular individual, um, what's the kind of the likelihood, I guess from a hypothetical setting, that they get to talk to that individual compared to something nefarious, picking up the line of communication and taking the spot of what they're trying to talk to, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll split this in two since you mentioned a Ouija board or basically spirit boards. With a spirit board, you have to, if you're going to use one, you have to know who you want to contact, and you have to have that intent set, and it's usually good to set some type of ground rules. However, ultimately a spirit board is very much like blind dialing a number on a telephone. You don't know who's going to be on that other side. So without rules set up, without intent, without actually having a visualization of who you want to speak to, then chances are you're going to get something else. Not necessarily nefarious, but you'll get something else than what you really want. Plus, whatever you're trying to contact, they might have already moved on. Maybe they don't want to talk. Like, go away, leave me alone,
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Now, as far as a seance, since it's a bit more controlled, usually you have to have some type of personal item of whatever it is that you're trying to contact with. And then, even then, it has to be in that location. So, for instance, you want to speak to Grandma Joe. Well, Grandma Joe might have moved on, and you can do all the seances and have this personal item as much as you want. That doesn't mean you can't pick up on her energy she left behind and get information like that. But as far as actually contacting her, no, she's moved on. Uh, but because you are just trying to contact her, I won't say something will come in and pretend to be her in a seance and hijack it, but something else can come forward because you are opening that door,
Right.
and you can't control who comes in and who comes out. You can control who you speak to. You could say, "No, I'm not speaking to you. Leave." But you can't control who comes in or comes out, especially at a certain location. Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense?
I mean, yeah, that kind of makes sense because I normally kind of think, I guess I didn't really consider you could have those aspects where, like you say, you're trying to speak to a particular individual, but that individual isn't lingering around. They've moved on, and you also still will have an element of control if something comes through that you're not looking to talk to. You can just say, go away. We're not talking to you. No, that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, so it's always good though to have a personal item of whoever it is you're trying to contact. Not saying people should do this, but if you were, at least have a personal item so you can somewhat anchor in the energy a bit better instead of going in like an idiot and like, oh yeah, I'm ooh, let's see what
Picking
happens.
up a phone, like you're saying,
And
dialing any old number and
yeah,
hoping you get the right person.
and it's very important that you freaking hang up. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right on a board or whatever. Goodbye. I'm not speaking to you. You can't be here. You do not have my permission. Leave. You're done. And you know, I would say sage or use some Palos Altos, flip the board over. That's it. Whatever you guys do, don't freaking burn the son of a
Ugh.
monkey's uncle. That's one of the worst things you can do
Why is it bad to burn it?
because you're opening up a portal. And if you burn the board, that portal is still open. It's not closed. Now you can't close it. So now anything can come through and visit, just say, "Hey, I see you in the bathroom," So just don't burn the board.
If you're gonna decide to use a Ouija board, which we don't advise, don't burn it afterwards.
Yeah, don't be stupid. Just if need be, sage, Palos Altos, turn it over and get rid of it if you really want. So,
Well, excellent, Mel. I think that does it for the others and for the films for the evening. So we'll talk about next week on the Ministry of Horror. We're going to be finally doing a watch along with Retro Chats host Andy Evans. We're going to be looking at the X Files episode, which has been discussed in this show, in the Discord, number of times. We're finally getting to it. It's the season 4, episode 2, episode of the X Files, Home. I'm very excited for this because I've not seen it for a very long time, but I love the episode, and Andy hasn't seen it before at all. I will just preface it's going to be a similar watch along to the Escape the Undertaker. I obviously can't stream for copyright reasons the episode on the stream, but we'll do like a synced up watch along. So hit play 3, 2, 1, and then me and Andy will be talking about the episode as it goes on. Little introduction about the X Files as a show, and de-escalating and discussing it, in detail. Obviously, we've got Andy's retro chat is on Wednesday. I believe Lawrence is doing some Red Dead Wednesday night. Is that right, Crimson Mal?
yep, Red Dead
Red Dead
Redemption.
Redemption, excellent. I caught one of the streams the other week. I mean, it's an excellent game anyway, but really, really entertaining stuff. And Ministry of Slam, as always, Sunday evenings. Mal, talk about unexplained possibilities.
Yeah, so if you are into the paranormal, supernatural, occult, or just anything different, then you guys definitely want to check out Unexplained Possibilities on YouTube, home of the Unexplained Possibilities podcast, where I speak to different people from the occult world, whether they're paranormal investigators, witches, sorcerers, crystal people, metaphysics, all that fun stuff. Even had a Scientologist on.
Really?
Yes. And if you can't catch it on YouTube, don't worry. The podcast is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, all those places. Coming up, though, it's going to be me reviewing, funnily enough, season 2 of The X Files.
Oh,
So that will be up next week. I'm also reviewing a book on chaos magic by Peter Carroll. Oh gosh, that's not good. I can't remember the name. Liber something. Hold up. What is that? Libernol. There we go. Libernol. That will be up next week. And I'm starting a new thing now on Sunday mornings. I think I'm going to call it Breakfast with Mel or Sunday Morning Hanging with Mel. And it's just me on my couch and chatting with you on Sunday morning.
excellent.
So all that on Unexplained Possibilities.
Oh, excellent. And Mel, where can people find you on socials?
So you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, and Instagram, and it's all Unexplained Possibilities.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Mal, for coming on the show. We had a great chat. I've got some rewatching of some films to do, and definitely some research. And I think we'll definitely have to look at doing something talking about cults at some point in the future.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, I agree.
I just want to obviously also shout out to the chat. Thanks, Fran the Cannon. He said fascinating chat. Erratic Agents dropped by. Carrier's cool. Everyone's been in the chat. The Gruff as well. Yeah, it's been a really cool show. And remember to check us out on Facebook, Ministry of Horror, Twitter, Ministry_Horror, and Discord is Ministry-of-Horror. Podcast I'm going to be hopefully getting online this evening. If not, it will be on tomorrow, Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and will also be on the MOS network feeds for both. From myself and from Mel, good evening. We'll see you later.